الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم واجعلنا منهم آمين. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين. لك الحمد يا ربي على كل حال، ونعوذ بالله من حال أهل النار. As you are aware, I'm going to use the dates of the US because it will differ from the dates of the Middle East. So on June 13, as you know, our time was Thursday evening. Middle East time was Friday morning. A massive attack was done by the Zionist entity against Iran. It was a massive attack and destructive, no doubt about it. Planes attacked major sites in Iran, and Mossad agents were on the ground, play a major role in assassinating the top echelon of the army and the nuclear scientists. Afterward, Iran started attacking, a mild attack the first evening, but the days followed, there was more of a strong attack using more advanced missiles in this regard, and there was much destruction from the north to the south. And the Israelis continue the bombing throughout that week. And we mentioned last week that the president of the US was visiting Canada for the G7 meeting, and he was resisting signing 3 agreements with the G7 members, one over Ukraine, one over tariffs, and one over the Israeli-Iranian conflict. And until the last minute, he refused to sign any of them. And his advisors in the last minute told him to sign this thing that have to do with the Israel and Iran. And he did reluctantly, so he did not really like it. So to make a drama, after he signed, and they knew that he did not like it, but he signed it, he made this statement that I have to leave the conference because the conference is not done yet. And there's something big will happen, and the people of Tehran have to evacuate. So for about 12 hours plus or minus, there was too much uncertainty of what's coming. It turned out that there was nothing coming on that Friday. Nothing happened. The president went back. Of course, the Israeli press started talking about the US will bomb on Friday and so on and so forth, but none of this have happened. And the conflict continued, and we start having mixed signals from the president on the US, stand on bombing Iran. And suddenly the White House issued a statement saying, we will decide after 2 weeks, as we discussed last week.
Within 2 weeks.
Right. Within 2 weeks, we will reach a decision, although on some of the interpretation that nothing will happen before 2 weeks. But there was that confusion too. And on the July 23rd, or I should say July 22nd, our time, the president came and said that the US have bombed 3 nuclear sites in Iran, and it was a massive. Those B-52 flew from Missouri and basically have done the wonders They have total destruction, obliteration of those sites, and all of this image giving that basically the Iranians' program is finished in that sense, and it will not come back. That's the image that was given in this regard. So Iran acknowledged that there was, 3 attacks by the U.S. And before that, they were threatening that if the U.S. attack Iran, Hezbollah will move, which was a stupid statement from the Iranian officials, because it just tells that, as if the Hezbollah is, a remote control from Iran. Hezbollah did not move. And they were threatening that if the U.S. attacks, they will do this and they will do that, and there will be lots of, destruction in U.S. bases, and there will be casualties. None of this took place. And then, suddenly, we had the president saying, there is an agreement on a ceasefire. And this is still within about 24, 36 hours from the U.S. bombing. What was clear is that the U.S. Vice President, J.D. Vance, was talking to someone in Tehran. That's clear. There was this direct talk between the Vice President and the Iranians. And when CNN came and said, there is this agreement, and J.D. Vance is talking to the Iranians, and the president asked even Tamim, after the Iranian bombed the Aidid base in Qatar, we'll talk about this, that the US president asked Tamim to talk to the Iranians, to the brothers in Iran, and the president basically said, that's it, there is an agreement for a ceasefire. Just before that agreement took place, the Israelis assassinated a major figure in Tehran. As a result, the Iranians sent a few missiles to Tel Aviv. And in response, Netanyahu sent some airplanes to attack Iran, and Trump came publicly and he was very, very upset and told Netanyahu, get the planes back. The planes are not to attack. And the planes were called back in this regard. And in fact, Trump used not, a good language to express his frustration in this regard. But what is interesting is this part, because as, Trump announced, and some people may come and say this is artificial intelligence, this is not true. No, it's verified. This is verified. So Trump came with this statement that the Iranians are very nice. They told us, that's what Trump was saying. They told us, is it okay to attack at 1 a.m.? Is that a good time for you? And we told him, yeah, 1 a.m. is a good time for us. So basically, they sent a few missiles to Al-Aidid base in Qatar. They intercepted all of them except one that reached the base, and there was no planes, there was no soldiers in sight, so nothing happened. So this action that happened clearly was in coordination with the U.S. government, in cooperation with the U.S. government, in agreement with the U.S. government. And this raises few questions that we can discuss. But before that, whenever there's a war, people usually ask how many casualties are there. That's a factor, no doubt. How many planes were shot? How many missiles were fired? All of this is some legit questions. What is more serious after each war, what is the political implication? Because that can be the main factor for many, many, many years to come. For example, the Ottomans entered the First World War on the side of the Germans. And Germany was defeated, and the Ottomans also were defeated because their allies were defeated in this regard. Germany stayed intact, but restrictions were put in Germany that eventually Hitler overcame it and declared war, and Second World War happened. But the Ottomans paid a much bigger price. The whole Ottoman state, or whatever is left of it, is now chopped into pieces. So Palestine, there was an Ottomans, the army in Palestine and in Jordan and in Syria and in Lebanon and in many parts of the Muslim world. What happened is that all those became part or under the colonial systems of the Europeans. So colonial system, as a result of this, entered the rest of the Muslim world, what we call today the Muslim world, because there were countries that already were taken because of the weak, so-called the weak man or the sick man, the Ottomans. So Egypt was under the British, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco were already under the French in this regard. So part of what we know as the Muslim world was already under colonial system. But with the defeat of Germany and the Ottomans in First World War, the political implication was massive because the country was chopped into pieces. Not just that, after that, even the symbolic Khilafah came to an end, and a new secular system came into Europe that fought religion, the religion of Islam, in a way that, we did not really hear on before from Muslims, where teaching the Quran was prohibited. If you are teaching Quran to your kids, you will go to jail. Adhan is no longer in Arabic, it's in Turkish. Masajid, the main masjid that's there became a museum, and so on and so forth. But what I mean is that the political implications were massive. So don't count how many people were, killed and so on and so forth, although this is a factor, as I said. Even Turkey, until today, there are agreements as a result of World War I that tie the hands of Turkey. Until today. Because it was the result of the defeat of World War I. Same thing when we saw Oslo, there was political implication on the West Bank and Gaza that still people are suffering from, all those years afterward, even before the October 7th. So we look at what are the political implications of the event, because it's much more important, as I said, and it's a long-term effect. And there are many examples. You can see the surrender of Japan and how Japan became just, yes, sir, to the US and whatever the US will do. In fact, they wrote their constitution in this regard. So what are the political implications in what took place in this regard? It's difficult to understand the mechanism of what took place to end the war. Because we have Iranian officials coming to CNN after the president said Iran agreed, and those officials said, no, there was no agreement. We are still at war. We did not receive anything. So it seems that there are some circles within the ruling elite in Iran who still continue their communication with the US. That's one. Secondly, those same elites coordinated with the US that, look, we were attacked, we have to do something. And of course, Trump will say, okay, I understand. So we want to hit Al-Aidid base, so please evacuate. We do not want any soldier to be harmed. We do not want destruction. We need to tell our people that we did something. And that's total betrayal to the people of Iran to come and says, we hit the US very hard. You did not hit the US very hard. You did not do anything in this regard. You bombed Qatar. You bombed, a base in Qatar that was empty. And the funny thing is, the CNN comes with this line that the Qatari armed forces intercepted all the Iranians' missiles. Subhanallah. So Israel cannot interrupt the missiles that's coming, and so many of them have hit, but Qatar was interrupting all the missiles. What a joke. What a joke. And to come and tell your own people that we defeated Israel, that can be discussed. That can be discussed. But to come and say we defeated the US, we hit the US very hard, absolute nonsense in this regard. Another aspect of this operation is if some of these events happened to an Arab country, it would have come to an end. The regime would have collapsed. But Iran is not just like any other country. And when Netanyahu from the first day saying this is a time to change the regime, we're going to aim to change the Iranian regime, we will give the Iranian people their freedom, we will do this and this and this and this and that. And again, all of this was utter nonsense. Iran is not like Arab countries run by mukhabarat. So if the king is gone and you can get the leadership of the mukhabarat, basically the system can collapse if few on the top echelon of the army cooperate with you. Iran has different layers of loyalist forces to the Ayatollah and to the regime. From the Revolutionary Guards, to the Quds Force, to the army itself, to the intelligence service, and so on and so forth. So we cannot say that the Israelis meant it. Most likely it was try to attempt to get some opposition from Iran to stand and to make trouble or to make problems or to try to demonstrate within Iran. That's the maximum that he could get. It was clear that the system was intact, although the disaster that they have in the first 10 minutes is beyond myself and should be beyond all of you. A country like Iran, vast amount of land, with more than 90 million people, with this proud, long history that they keep talking about, and this sense of nationalism with an Islamic flavor. How in the world this could happen? How? Now we know that they start arresting hundreds of Jews in Iran. It's too late. Now we know that they are gonna take a case against Azerbaijan. Iran is accusing Azerbaijan that some of the drones, the Israeli drones, came from Azerbaijan. And that should not surprise us. Azerbaijan is a Shiite country. They are Muslims, but the majority are Shiite. But they have a long conflict with Iran. They are neighbors. And Azerbaijan consider that a big part of Iran is part of Azerbaijan, to a river. There's a river there. They said all the way to the river is Azerbaijan. And that's why when Armenia and Azerbaijan had the fights on and off, the latest one that took place, which Armenia was badly defeated, Iran stood on the side of Armenia. Armenia is a Christian country, and they have enmity toward the Ottomans all those years, and they have enmity toward Azerbaijan, of course. So Turkey was supporting Azerbaijan, and Israel was supporting Azerbaijan, and Iran was supporting Armenia in this regard. So it should not surprise us that the Israelis have bases in Azerbaijan, not necessarily what you think of Al-Adid base in Qatar and the other bases in UAE, and now we have it in Saudi. The bases are coming back there was some news in the New York Times that they will be based in Jeddah and maybe even a base in Ta'if in this regard. So when you see this dynamic of the role of the countries around it, you will understand that they could or they should have taken into account and should have tried to make, arrangement and peace with their own brothers down the stream, rather than one day to be used as a base, a Muslim land to be used as a base against them. Another implication that we have seen of this war is really very, very unfortunate. The Arab countries have no weight, no influence, nothing that they can say after this war that we are proud that we did this. Of course, if we exempted what happened in Jordan, that they claim that they have stopped some of the drones. Some of the drones coming from Iran toward Israel, not the other way around. They said, yeah, we intercepted some of those drones. What's the justification? It was threatening our country, our land. And we know that's not the case. We know that's not the case because what happened in October last year, when there was a similar event where Israel threw missiles at Iran, and Iran threw missiles and drones, that Arab countries intercepted those on behalf of the Israelis in this regard. How in the world did we get Iran and Turkey to be manufacturing their own weapons and selling those weapons to Russia and Ukraine? Russia and Ukraine today, they were saying that massive amount of drones came from Russia toward Ukraine. You know that the bulk of the Russian drones that are being used by Russia are Iranian drones. And the bulk of the drones that are being used by Armenia are Turkish drones. So where is this whole huge wealth that Allah have put in those Arab countries? Where is this massive population that is in the Middle East? We hear that the armies are very busy manufacturing macaroni and cheese. You are laughing. That's the reality, unfortunately. They are manufacturing biscuits. The army is manufacturing things to enrich the army and the upper echelon of the army. And on the other side of this, other Arab countries, massive celebrations and parties and bringing the junk of the world to Arabia for those parties. And the issue, of course, of sports and entertainment and this and this and that. يا حسرة على our situation as Muslims of what happened to those countries that used to be the base for this Islam that shined all over the world. But this is by design. This is by design. That this Arab world need to be like this. No weight. Look at, they have been fighting in Yemen for many, many years in this regard. Iran and Iraq fought for 8 years. So that's something that is a reality. And it's a sad one. And this situation cannot continue like this. Because the people eventually, they would need to see why they got to be poor, backward, have no weight. They see the whole area moving and they have no say. They have no say. I mean, take it from Mauritania and Morocco in the west to Syria, Jordan, and take it from Egypt down to the Sudan and beyond. Absolutely no weight in what took place. And no one cares what do they say. I remember during the events, so my wife saying, oh, the king is giving a talk. I said, who cares? She wanted to hear it, and she was telling me, she thought I'll be. I said, who cares? He has no say, he has no weight. For this war, he does not exist even. He does not exist. Yes, the missiles are flowing because, as you know, Iran and Palestine do not share borders. So if you want to send missiles or planes, they have to go over other countries. So direct, they will go through Jordan and Iraq, or they will go through Syria and Iraq, or they come down through Saudi and go around the planes. The missiles need to come direct from the other side. So, unfortunately, those Arab countries were watching, just like me and you. Another thing to see of the implication of what took place is that toward the middle of the 12 days, we have seen Netanyahu coming clearly and saying and asking France and Britain to help defend Israel. It's only a month ago that the Israeli politicians were attacking Macron and attacking the French. When they talk about the need for a Palestinian state and we're going to have a conference for a Palestinian state, they attack. They said, why don't you establish a Palestinian state in France, at the French Riviera? You know, mocking the French and calling Macron a Hamas sympathizer and terrorist supporter, whatever those terms that we have heard. Suddenly he's asking France, help defend Israel. He asking Britain, help defend Israel. Please come block those missiles. And asking the US to do the same, but asking the US to directly involve in the war. I mean, the ultimate objective for the Zionists was not for America to bomb those sites. The ultimate objective is get engaged in a war just like Iraq and Afghanistan and remove the Ayatollahs and put your own agents in power. The Hamid Karzai, the Maliki type, and you know all those people, and in this regard. So they were trying to get the U.S. involved so that they can use them, you know, again ignite the war. كلما أوقدوا نارا للحرب أطفأها الله, as the Quran says, whenever they start those wars, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring it to an end. So in this regard comes again this aspect that we are to be assured of, which the Quran said that those people will have no say, no weight, no influence, except if Allah supports them, and Allah is not, because they have abandoned the deen from the time they rejected Isa alayhi salam, and they became just colonialists, no more no less these days, or a robe from the people. They cannot stand on their own. Allah is telling us those people, they cannot stand on their own. They always would need a rope, either from Allah the Creator or from the people. And exactly here we saw the same. I mean, wasn't it just, you know, few years back, Netanyahu saying Israel is the safest place on the world. I call upon all the Jews to come to Israel. This is the safest place in the world. This is the place, is this. And it start talking about it as if it's the Jannat al-Khuld. And then he comes at a later stage and says, our existence is in danger because of Iran. I thought you were the safest, just a few years back. But they know their reality. So for him to come publicly, Britain, France, US, help, because we have been told all those years, they milk the US of so much money to build the Arrow system of defense, those Arrow missiles for defense. They milk the US of so much money over the years for their defense. And they said we have a first layer and a second layer and a third layer, and what we saw is failure after failure after failure. What it is, the Iranians very smart. Send a drone that's worth a few $100s, and the Israelis will send 3 missiles to intercept it. Each one is worth $1 million. And that's why the Wall Street Journal said Israel cannot maintain and continue in this war, because each day they lose hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Another aspect of this is that always it has been the case that the Zionists would bomb left and right, country after country, and those countries will be on the receiving end. This is the first time, if we put October 7 on the side, this is the first time that the country, the occupied Palestine, all the way from the north to the Negev in the south, were hit, and some of those places were hit very hard. Suddenly, those Zionists, and some of those who are not so Zionist, but they end up living in Palestine because of the subsidized housing, and they put it, as they put it, of the clean air in the West Bank. 850,000 settlers live in the West Bank, if we count the settlements around Jerusalem. Because some of the numbers are misleading when they said 600,000. They do not take into account the settlements around Jerusalem. So 850,000 of them live in the West Bank. And for the first time, settlements were hit. Settlements were hit from outside. On October 7, the surrounding of Gaza was hit, was hit very hard, no doubt about this. But this touches all the part of occupied Palestine, especially the 1948, from way up in the north to the south. Military bases in the south, Tel Aviv, Jaffa, Haifa, small cities. There's no doubt that the attack had produced massive damage. Now, someone may argue that this is really very small compared with what the Israelis inflicted on the Iranians the first night. I agree. I agree. And all what Iran has done is basically 15–20% maximum of the damage that the Israelis have done to Iran the first night. Let's talk about the US bombing. So the US came and said, basically, Trump said that was totally destruction of the sites, were obliterated. They are out of function. They are no longer a threat, and so on and so forth, that we have done a wonderful job, a marvelous job. No army in the world come and can do anything close, and so on and so forth. Now, within 2 days, the US intelligence, here, I'm not talking about the Iranian intelligence. The US intelligence came and told the US media the damage was not serious, and that Iran, within a few months, gonna go back and resume their work. Wow. I mean, this is the US intelligence. You know, they have the satellites. They have supposedly people on the ground. They were monitoring, you know, phone calls and messages and this and that. I mean, they have supercomputers that can monitor hundreds of billions of messages and phone calls each hour and analyze them through, you know, artificial intelligence and looking for certain terms. So this is the intelligence community in the US. They are serving the president. They come and say the damage is not as was described. And that the material that was enriched to 60%, which supposedly triggered much of this, that this material, the Iranians already took it away and hide it. And some media outlets start showing trucks that got this material way before they have been attacked by the US. And from what you can sense, it looks like the US did inform the Iranians ahead of time that they will bomb the 3 places. That this thing was already conveyed to the Iranians because you could see the response. The Iranians were not surprised like the first night. And within hours, they were talking to the vice president. I mean, how in the world, you know, you are attacked and supposedly this massive attack destroy all your nuclear capabilities and this and this and that, and then you are talking to the vice president on the phone within 2 hours. I mean, how could that be? If it was not that the channels were already established the day before and the day before and the day before, and the communication was direct. Again, the communication was direct because one of the things that Trump have done that was not there before is to talk to people that the US government will not talk to in the past. Remember the first term? He went and met with North Korean leader. He said, you know, I like him, you know, we are friends and we are in love, in fact. He said, we are in love in this regard. Of course, nothing came out of that. But then they talked to Hamas, and that, you know, get the Israelis, you know, very, very upset. They were talking directly to the Hamasis. And they have been talking to the Iranians. I'm not talking about the, you know, the so-called the nuclear talks. We discussed this before. Yeah, they were meeting. And we said that Trump gave them 60 days and, you know, and said, you have this window. I mean, we are not talking about those public talks. We are talking about on the level of the leadership when it comes to some of these events that took place. Because suddenly, you know, when the war is really reaching a peak and each one is bombing the other, and the US just bombed them and supposedly, you know, make big destruction within hours. Oh, we're talking about ceasefire and an agreement, and we're gonna work this thing out, and we're gonna have this, and the Iranians are very nice people. In fact, he went even further. He said, may God bless Iran. That's the president. May God bless Iran, and may God bless Israel, and may God bless Israel. So the Middle East, you know, his dua is supposedly those people were waiting for his dua. Maybe, you know, the dua will be accepted. You get all the blessings in Iran because of dua from President Trump. What's this mahasala? I mean, if this was really a real enmity and of consequences, this is not the sort of behavior, this is the sort of action that you would expect within a few hours. It does not fit, it does not, you know, measure in this regard. Now, if the Iranians have came and said, just like what the Japanese have said in World War II, you know, yes, we submit, we were defeated badly, and we are willing to accept whatever terms, or what happened to Germany in First World War, what happened to the Ottomans in First World War, what happened to Germany in Second World War, where Germany became 2 Germanys and this and that. I mean, if this is this real with the US now, with the Israelis, it is real. I'm going to mention this in a moment. So I think we still are seeing that the old theory is that the US and Iran, they do not have any strategic differences, and they can work together. They can cooperate together. The problem is that Iran is asking the US to give it something that the US will not. Iran wants a space to dominate the Gulf, because that's what Shah Iran was doing. Shah Iran was the police of the Gulf. Iran at that time of Shah Iran was dominating the Gulf in this regard. And it was the Israelis who helped Iran to start a nuclear program in the 70s. Did you get this? The Israelis are the ones who helped Iran to start a nuclear program in the 70s. When Iran eventually asked and paid for Germany to build the nuclear reactors, and they started, and as we said, they stopped in 1979, which Russia eventually in 1994 took it and completed this program after an understanding with the US for Iran to have a peaceful program, nuclear program. So from this perspective, as I said, there is not a strategic difference between the Iranians and the US. It was not there in the 80s, it was not there in the 90s, it was not there afterward. It is a fact. If you go to Google and type Iran Gate, some of you are old enough to remember Iran Gate. Some of the young do not know what I'm talking about. But basically, there was a time that US officials and Zionist representatives were meeting in Tehran during the war between Iraq and Iran. So every Friday, there's a massive Jum'ah prayer in Tehran at the university, where so many people come, and they keep saying, death to America, death to Israel, and the Ayatollah's representative are meeting with the Americans and the Israelis in Tehran. That's, just type Iran Gate. More than this, the representatives of the Ayatollahs were visiting the White House at night. They were visiting the White House at night and being taken a tour of the White House. Just put Google Oliver North. This is an officer that was stationed in the White House, military officer, who at night will bring the representatives of the Ayatollah to tour the White House. This at the same time in Tehran during the Jum'ah prayer, they were saying death to America and death to Israel. Not just that, false intelligence was given to Saddam and Iraq, which resulted in the Iranians taking over the FAO area, which they could not take before. And Saddam came on public TV. He said the US gave us intelligence, but they gave us the false intelligence. They told us to concentrate on one side. We put the army on that side, and the Iranians came from the other side. So obviously, that was an understanding that was there. I mean, I can continue on this. All what I'm saying is that there is not a real enmity between the Iran and the US. And you can see that all the Iranian presidents, with the exception of Ahmadinejad, Ahmadinejad was genuinely against the US. That's why he tried to run in the last election, and the Ayatollah blocked him. And he came out and gave this statement about how the Mossad is really infiltrating Iran to the highest level. But talk about Rafsanjani, talk about Khatami, talk about Rouhani. I mean, all of them, you hear their statements of we need this with the US and we can work with the US and do this and this and this and this and that. But there were some elements within Iran that they did not like this. And I said, Ahmadinejad was one of those who did not go for this. But between Israel and Iran, until this past few weeks, there's also not a real enmity. There was not a real enmity. And we have seen when they ended up bombing each other, it was really symbolic last year. When Biden came to them and said, oh, you already did something, you did something, let's just take it a draw. When the Israelis assassinated Haniya, Allah yarhamah, in Tehran, and then assassinated the top leadership of Hezbollah and assassinated, many of those, may Allah accept, as shuhada in this regard, that Iran told the US, we have to do something. We have to do something. So they did some bombing, and it was really insignificant, did not bring much damage. Because it was not intended to bring much damage in this regard. And the relationship between the Israelis and the Iranians go back, as I said, long time. And the Israelis have big presence in Iran during the time of the Shah. Because basically, the Israelis, this is an artificial body that was implanted with weapons and money in Palestine. But Iran is a country that has a history throughout the years of Islam and before Islam in this regard. But their unique aspect, when the Uthmanis fought them for many years and put the Shiite presence or entity in Iran, isolated in Iran, from that point the Iranians have tried to collaborate with whoever they can. You should just read the letters of the Iranian Shah to the Europeans saying, why do you fight among yourselves? We need me and you to unite against the Ottomans. I mean, those are public letters that you can read. So it was natural when this artificial body was implanted, artificial tree was implanted in the Middle East, this colonial settler system that was implanted in the Middle East, it was natural for them to look for allies. And they found their allies in the Shia in Iran and the Christian militias in Lebanon. In addition to the Alawis in Syria. For the sake of time, let me just mention a few other points. We are seeing still today the miserable situation in Gaza. The genocide continues. They are asking people to come and take food and they will kill them. There are so far hundreds who were killed just trying to come and get some food. And this is not just Palestinian reports in this regard. Haaretz, this is an Israeli left-leaning newspaper, Haaretz, says that army officers told Haaretz that we have orders from the upper echelon of the army to shoot, to kill Palestinians who are not a threat to us. They were coming to get food. This is just 2 days ago. And Netanyahu, a loser in this life and the hereafter, inshallah, and the bigger loser who is nobody, the defense minister who at one point was saying, I'm going to burn Tehran. They attacked Haaretz for saying that. That's war crimes. They already accused of war crimes in this regard. So, in the West Bank, people cannot move around. There is They are chopping the cities and the villages, and restrictions are all over the place. If you want to go between two cities, it may take you a day or two to go around and try if you succeed. Military checkpoints are all over the place, and I was told by a friend of mine that they have installed one checkpoint on a place called Jab'a. It's north of Jerusalem. And at one point, they just closed it. And there were a long line waiting to enter to the other side of the Palestinian territory, quote unquote, under the Palestinian territory, which is Beit Laham, Beit Jala, Hebron, and beyond. And people had to sleep in their cars all the night, because basically they cannot go back. There's not much gasoline. They would give each one a small portion. He said this is just a sample of what people are going through. Today, there was a statement from the Israelis that the north of where I come from, the north part of the city, they closed the entrance until the end of 2027. You know what is this entrance? This entrance is the main road that connects Jerusalem to Nablus, and Jerusalem to Jenin, and Jerusalem to Tulkarem, and Jerusalem to Qalqilia, and Jerusalem to all the villages, hundreds of them around those cities. They're saying we're going to close this until the end of 2027. You know, why in the world you would come and say we're going to keep it closed for the next 2.5 years? It's just to make the life of the people miserable. I mean, they could just say, you know, we are closing it from now till the end of the year and then extend it and extend it. But the point is, they are getting very, very aggressive, not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank. Of course, we have heard statements recently, because the president is always optimistic, always talking about what he can achieve. You remember he was saying, I'm going to end the war between Ukraine and Russia in 1 day. How many months it has been, and the war is still going. So he's talking now about, oh, we're going to have this in Middle East where some countries, new Arab countries basically, will join this Abrahamic thing that some of the Arab countries signed with the Israelis and, you know, have a peace agreements. They call it under this Abrahamic Accord, which Abraham alayhi salam have nothing to do with this. This is a criminal agreement aimed at liquidating the issue of Palestine and giving up on the struggle of the people in Palestine. That's a betrayal to the cause of Palestine and the cause of Islam, giving the Zionists a right in Palestine and basically killing any future for the people of Palestine in Palestine. That's the Abrahamic Accord. It has nothing to do with what they are talking about. That's the bottom line. So the president said some of those countries will join the Abrahamic Accord, and we're going to have end to the Gaza fighting, and we'll bring the hostages back, and we will have this agreement and this and this and that. He has been talking this like this in the past few days. No doubt, if the president insists on bringing the war in Gaza to an end, he can. What is outrageous, listen to this. What is outrageous, if I am living in occupied Palestine and I happen to be a Jew or an Israeli citizen who came from, 2 million of them came from Russia and 500,000 came from Romania and this other, you will be outraged by something that the president said. You know that we have discussed this a few times in the past in this session. Netanyahu is under corruption charges and he is being taken to court. And he have been to court many days during the war of Gaza. Many days to testify on his own trial. And there's a good chance that he will end up in jail. There's a good chance he will end up in jail. And he has been, talking and trying to evade this. I have the war, I cannot come. They said, no, you need to come. And he will go and testify and sit in his own court. What he said in the last 24 hours or so, he said Netanyahu should be pardoned from those charges. And this court for Netanyahu should end. Otherwise, you know that we Americans are giving too much money to the Israelis. We will stop this money. Did you hear this, or should I repeat it? You heard it? I mean, in the US, we know in the US, if somebody is in jail because of federal crime, no matter how heinous and how criminal is this person, the president can pardon him. And we know he pardoned the January 6 people, except for one person who refused to come out. He said, I am a criminal, and I want to stay in jail. And we know that many people who have done so much crime and stole so much money and this and that, he pardoned them for a reason or another. He pardoned the mayor of New York, who was on corruption charges. He went to him, Adams, and said, I will cooperate with ICE. And the president said, you have a pardon. He pardoned him. So now he's running for re-election. Similarly, the governor of each state can pardon any state crime. But where does it say that the president of the United States can pardon a criminal in Israel? Where? And threatening to send no more money, which we all support, I guess, send no more money to occupied Palestine for those criminal Zionists. He said, yeah, we send money to you, meaning I can tell you what to do. Pardon this criminal. End the court of this criminal, that is the Netanyahu. Now, what's the connection? What is the connection? The connection is that Trump talked to Netanyahu and Dremer. On the call was Rubio. And they were discussing ending the war in Gaza. And either Netanyahu or Dremer said, look, we have a court for Netanyahu. If the war in Gaza ends, the court now, they will have free time to come and hold Netanyahu, accountable, and he may end up in jail. So he said to the president, I need your help. And the president came out and said, this court need to be stopped, because this court has nothing to do with anything except that this issue came in the discussion, which now the Israeli legal experts are looking at this issue and saying, if this thing happened, that's criminal. Because he's trying to go around his criminal case and getting someone, that is the President of the United States, to interfere on his behalf and saved him from the jail. Not just that, so he can call for election and run again for the election. That's very serious. If you are there, it means, are they a banana republic? Is Israel now a banana republic? Even the court system is run from Washington, D.C. That's very significant. I'm sure some of you might not, see how impactful is this, but that's the reality. I will, inshallah, for the sake of time, stop on this issue here, but let me have 2 minutes or 3 minutes to talk about what happened in New York and in North Carolina. In North Carolina, the Democratic Party took a major step against the Zionist entity in Palestine and the armament of there. So a stand that really, at first, I'm not sure if any other state have done the same. Some others did it. It's a first. Brother Jihad is our expert in this because he follows these things. This is the first state in the country that come and take so much of a decision that was very, very strong against the Zionists. This is, again, not the legislator. Make a distinction. We are not talking about the legislator. This is the Democratic Party gathering that took place. Secondly, we have seen that a decisive win by a Muslim to be a potential mayor for New York. The reason why I say potential, because he defeated Cuomo decisively, and the other ones, he came with a large lead, about 45% or so, over the corrupted Cuomo, who have his scandals, who used to be the governor. Adams, the current mayor, did not run as a Democrat because he's pardoned by Trump, but he said he's going to run in the general election. Now, Cuomo is saying, I'm going to run in the general election. So now the general election will have one Republican, at least, as far as I know, and 3 Democrats running. Zohran will be one, Cuomo will be the second, and Adams will be the third. Regardless of the outcome, I mean, that was a big, big defeat for the Zionists and their supporters in New York. New York City is the largest city that have Jewish population behind Tel Aviv. And for a Muslim to win this decisive victory in the election for the mayor of the city, despite their money. I mean, the Ackman, this billionaire, and the Bloombergs and all those Bergs, you know, the rich people, they put so much money to defeat the brother, and they did not succeed. They did not succeed. So it sent, no doubt, shockwaves among the Zionists and their supporters that the landscape in America is changing. We have seen it at the university. Now we see it in the heart of the Zionism movement in America, in New York City. And that's good news. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring the khair and the good for the ummah. I apologize for not leaving time for a question today because it's time for the adhan. We have only 5 minutes for iqamah. May Allah bring the khair and the good for the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give the hidayah for those who need it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect the blood of the Muslims from all over the world, especially what we see, the bloodshed in Gaza and the West Bank and Syria and Lebanon and beyond. Allahumma ameen. Jazakumullahu khair wa barakallahu fikum.